Hey everybody, welcome to our next cooking class, this quarantine cooking class. I've been enjoying giving a cooking class every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Central. So glad you're here to join me. Today we're going to be making a lentil stew with carrots and sweet potatoes. And I know that that is kind of a warm, or warm food for cold weather. Well, it turns out today, I don't know if you can see out the window behind me, but we're having a cold gray day in the 30s and 40s, so something like lentil stew isn't so bad. However, happy Cinco de Mayo. So I should have thought of that, and I should have made something with Mexican food today, but I didn't. Okay, but just to give you a little bit of background, this is a recipe that we used on our comfort foods for mind and body. And we weren't able to make it during the week. So by popular demand, I am making it, popular request, I am making it today. It contains lentils, which are a great source of nutrition for us. I have some dried lentils here. Nice thing about cooking with dried lentils is, unlike beans, they tend to cook up very nicely, very quickly, without soaking them for long periods of time. If you'd like to soak them a little bit beforehand, you don't need to cook your recipe as long as we're going to be doing today. They contain a lot of fiber, which is great for us. It helps regulate our blood sugar levels. Good thing when you're watching your sugar levels and your insulin levels. But also has a lot of vitamin B, folate in particular, a lot of minerals such as magnesium and zinc, which keeps us healthy, which we're trying to do during these times. So a lot of good things. It's also a good source of protein. So for vegetarians, this is a great food to have for a meal. It has, in fact, it has more fiber than beans. And it has less carbs than beans. So if you're watching the carb content, actually lentils are a reasonable food. Because it has such a high fiber, it mitigates the amount of carbs that are in the bean itself. So to get started, I'm going to do a Instant Pot version of this recipe. The recipe that we had written down was for conventional, and I'll mention a little bit about the differences between the two. But to get things started, I am just going to start by cutting up one medium-sized onion. And I'm going to do this in a fairly medium-sized dice. Hopefully you can see me here. I kind of turned my station around a little bit so that we could take a look at the Instant Pot while I was working on it. You can also see some of my daffodils from my garden out behind over my shoulder here. All right, so I've just taken the skins off. I've cut the onion in half. And how I like to do this is I like to go with a horizontal chop through the side of the onion like so. And then I'm going to turn it and I'm going to chop it like so. All right, so let me just do that here. So I cut off the end that had the stem growing out of it, but I left the end with the root here so that it all stays together while I'm chopping it. All right. Sometimes they get a little slippery. Don't worry about it. Just be careful of your fingers. Hey, Debbie, how are you today? Good to see you. So glad you could join us. All right. And I'm just going to chop that up again on the second side. And while I'm chopping this, I'm going to start heating my Instant Pot to a saute function. What this does, what's nice about the Instant Pot, and I'm not trying to sell this or anything, but it's something that's a new way of cooking that's very popular right now, but a lot of people don't know how to use it. So what's nice about the Instant Pot is you can use it as a pressure cooker, you can use it as a slow cooker, but you can also use it to saute. So what's nice about this is I can start sauteing my vegetables and browning them and caramelizing them, and then just automatically seal it up and pressure cook it. The pressure cooking accelerates the cooking time, so it'll take a lot less time than if I was doing it conventionally. While I'm waiting for that Instant Pot to heat up, I'm also going to start chopping my carrots. I'm just going to push my onions off to the side a little bit so you can see this. Now I have some very big organic carrots. When I do organic carrots, I don't tend to peel them. I just give them a good scrub. I have a special scrubber that is good for just removing dirt from the surface. These are particularly big ones. So what I like to do is I am going to take this and I'm going to cut it lengthwise. And for the upper half, I might even cut it into quarters just so that I have some smaller pieces. So here you can see I cut it into 4s. I'm going to do the same thing with my other carrot. These are biggies. If they're not that big, you don't have to bother cutting them lengthwise the way I do here. Just watch your fingers as you're doing it. All right, I want to make sure you can see me. All righty, and I'm going to just cut this down lengthwise again. So I'm cutting this one in quarters. All right. Hey, Peggy, good to see you. Glad to have you with you. Debbie asked, can I use my crock pot or should I use a regular soup pot? You could do either one. If you do your crock pot, you can cook it slowly. Or you can use a conventional crock pot. I like to use, I'm going to bring it over to show you, something more akin to a Dutch oven. So it has a nice surface area on the bottom, pretty big. I tend to make them in pots like that rather than a small saucepan. But a soup pot, perfect. I'm just cutting across and dicing my carrots. My pot is heating up. I just want to show you the dice about this size, okay? And that was one carrot. Let me grab the other one, and I'm going to do the same as I am doing this. So as I was saying, lentils are really nice for a form of protein. I don't tend to do a lot of beans just because there's a lot of carbohydrates with it, and I try to keep my carb intake low. But beans in general are very, very nutrient dense. It's good if you're cooking regular conventional beans to soak them overnight. To help get rid of the phytic acid that might be on it and the lectins that are there. Lectins have been associated with leaky gut syndrome. So it's good to try to prepare your food properly to mitigate the lectins that are on that. And you can do that by soaking. All right, so I have my onions now and my carrots all chopped up. I want to just show you how they look. Okay, you can see they're about the same size. I try to keep everything about the same size so that they cook all at the same time. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in my oil. I've heated up my pot now. I'm going to add in, I've got about a tablespoon of oil in there. I'm going to heat that up in a second. What I'm going to do, which is a little bit different than the original recipe, is I'm going to put the carrots in with the onions because I like them to cook and caramelize. When you saute onions, the sugars that are naturally in the onions get sweeter. So you're bringing out the sweetness in those foods. The same thing with the carrots. Let me just grab a little scraper to make it easier to put this into my pot. So I'm going to throw in my onions. Now, typically, when I'm working with my Instant Pot, I actually put it on my stove so that I can use my vent, because when you're sauteing, you are having some of these oily vapors coming up. And it's kind of nice to have them suck right down in the room, basically, with your vent. But just for this purpose, I'm going to start to get this started. All right. And I wish I had one of those mirrors so that you could see down into the pot to see what's going on. I'm just going to let that cook up a little bit. And I'm going to add in some turmeric. Recipe calls for half a teaspoon. I'm going to give it a generous half teaspoon because I like it. In the past, I have also added a little bit of curry powder at this point, and that's something that's a little bit different than what's in the original recipe. But I like curry, so I'm going to add in, for now, I'm going to add in about 2 teaspoons of curry, just to give a little bit of additional interest into it. I'm going to stir it up, and I'm going to let those seasonings kind of toast up with the veggies and let them cook up. And while that's happening, I am going to chop up my potato. All right. So for this recipe, I don't bother to peel my potatoes. I usually don't peel my potatoes if I don't have to. It is, sorry about that. Such an interruption. Oh well. Sorry about the ringing in the background. Anyway, I don't like to peel my potatoes because a lot of the nutrition is out in the peel. In most vegetables, even onions, most of the nutrition, most of the phytonutrients, polyphenols that you'll find in vegetables are found in that outer layer. So I try to avoid peeling my vegetables as much as possible. So what I did was I just cut my potato lengthwise. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut it in, I have about 1/4 inch slices. I'm going to do that to the other side now. I might make it a little bit bigger because what's going to happen when you do this in the Instant Pot and you put the potatoes in this early is the potatoes cook down into a thick broth. So they kind of lose their, lose them into it, and it just helps to thicken the broth and to sweeten it up. So I'm just cutting them now lengthwise. So whereas I cut them this way, I'm now turning it and cutting it this way. So I'm just dicing them up. And I'm going to end up with pieces that are about this big. Hey, Kathy, how are you? So good to see you. Thanks for joining us today. This rainy day. It's kind of a good thing to be inside cooking, I think. So I would say I have these in about 1/2 inch dice here. So, and again, I want to keep them in a fairly consistent size. All right, so let's see if we can see. We've got these toasting up really nicely now. I don't want to burn my seasonings here, so let's continue on. What I'm going to do right away then is I am going to add my water in so nothing in this burns. I'm going to add in 2 cups of water, just to start. There are 4 cups total, but this will stop the sauteing. Now, I'm going to leave the saute function on and running. You can see it says hot, so you know it's still hot there. I'm going to leave that running so that it keeps everything in there nice and hot. And you'll see why in a moment, because I want to keep it almost to a boiling point when I put the lid on. So now we have everything in. Now I can add my lentils. Now, the recipe calls for 2 cups of lentils, which turns out is 1 package of a 1 pound bag of lentils. Just use my knife here to cut that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rinse it out in a colander in my sink. By the way, my sink has filtered water, so when I get the water from my sink, it's all filtered. I love that. So so I don't have to go through any other extra steps to add my water. But what I want to do is I want to rinse these off. You can soak them, as I said, for a little period beforehand. Helps to get some of the outer, any kind of proteins or anything that might be sticking onto the outside. But for this purpose, I think we're just fine just rinsing out. You want to check to make sure there's no stones in there. What's nice about these green, or sometimes they're called brown lentils as well, is they stay nice and firm. They don't cook down into mush. So it's going to keep a nice consistency when we make our stew here. So I'm just going to give this a quick rinse. And I can see that there's no real stones or anything in it. I'm going to let that sit for a minute just to drain. And we can add in some of our other ingredients. So I added the carrots already. I'm going to add a little bit of tomato paste. I'm going to show you a little trick that I have. So usually when you have a recipe, you usually don't use your whole can of tomato paste. So what I like to do is I like to keep the leftovers in the freezer. And what I do is I freeze them in ice cube trays. Each ice cube tray cube is about a tablespoon. So if I have 2 of these, I know I'm adding about 2 tablespoons, which is what the recipe calls for. Just a little trick. It beats having, it sit in your refrigerator and getting moldy before you use it. This way it keeps for a really long time. All right, so we added that in. We have the tomato paste. I'm going to add about a half teaspoon of salt. And I'm going to add about the same amount of black pepper. Now, normally I would use my pepper mill, but because it is a half teaspoon that we're looking for, I'm going to just measure it out. I have some ground pepper here, and I'm going to add that in. And I'm going to add along our sweet potato that we diced, right? Get my scraper, and I'm just going to add that right into the pot. All right. And let me give that a stir. It smells delicious. I wish you could smell it. All right. And let's add in those lentils. All right. Now, if I was doing this in a conventional pot, I'd be doing it on the stove over a medium heat. I would have sauteed my carrots and onions and seasonings the exact same way. The order of putting things into the pot on the stove would have been exactly the same. When I add my lentils in, if I was doing this on the stove, I would just put a lid on it and I would turn the fire under it to a low and let it simmer. Here's the difference. It would probably go, let's see, what does the recipe say? Probably for about 45 minutes. Maybe a little 45 minutes. Actually, it says 35 to 45 minutes. What's nice about the Instant Pot now is I can put my lid on. And what I want to do is there's a special little mechanism back here. Let me see if I can turn it around so you can see it. There is a little, here we go, you can see. I just turn this valve to lock it. And that's what keeps the steam in. And when you increase the pressure, it means that the temperature will, the pressure and the temperature will cook it quicker. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cancel that saute function. And now I'm going to go over to the button right here, which is the pressure cooker. And I'm going to put it on for 15 minutes. Now this is set automatically for 15 minutes here. If I press it again, this is a different function, but I've had it set. You can raise or lower the time here with the plus or minus, which is great. And that's it. So we're done. I just have to wait for this to come up to pressure and come down again. But what's nice about it is I don't have to sit over it, and I know that I don't have to watch over it if it's on the stove, and it's done and will be ready in a while. Now, if you wanted to do a slower cooker, you probably have to increase the time, I don't know, maybe to about 2 hours. You'd have to look at the instructions on your slow cooker to see what the differences would be. But you know, the nice thing with a slow cooker too is you can always test it. The other thing too is if you don't want your potatoes, your sweet potatoes, to cook down into the broth, then what you can do is don't add the sweet potatoes. It's harder with this. With the conventional, you can do this. With the slow cooker, you can do this. I'm not quite sure with the Instant Pot whether it makes sense to do this. But what you would do is you would cook your beans for probably about 20 minutes, then add your sweet potatoes back in and cook it for another 20, 25 minutes, whatever it takes. So we have our stew cooking here. What I would like to do is show you what it looks like when it is done. And while I'm doing that, I also wanted to remind everybody that tonight, Mary Ellen and I are hosting our Take 20 program, which is stress reduction for immune support. It's part 2. We have been talking about ways that you can help keep yourself healthy during these very difficult times. I hope you can join us. It is on Zoom. You can go to our webpage, which is Tips for a Healthy Lifestyle with Evey and Mary Ellen, and we will have the link there. I will also attach the link to this video so you know where to go. Just click on it tonight and you're welcome to join us. We will have a discussion, and then if we have time left over afterwards, we'll be doing a question and answer. In addition, we are doing a program starting the beginning of June, which is going to be our Metamorphosis program that is going to help us transition from the COVID-19 seclusion time that we've been having. So we want to focus on the emotional aspect of cleaning the body of stress and of toxins during this time of year and getting us prepared to come back into the real world again. So keep posted for that. We'll be posting things on that. If you want more information, certainly just IM me or send an email to me, and I'd be happy to explain a little bit more about that. But we'll be sending out more information about that later. Hey, Karen, good to see you. So happy to have you. Hold on one second. Let me see if I can move this pot so you can see me over in the corner. But what I'm going to do is, let's see if we can turn it here. All right, you can see I have my pot on the stove here. I'm just going to ladle out a little bit of our stew. Now what I did was, I made this stew last night. So what I ended up doing was adding a little bit more liquid into it. And feel free to do that. If it gets too thick for your liking, add back in some more water. You can also use a broth if you'd like to, a vegetable broth or a meat-based broth if you would like to get that flavor into it. Whatever you have handy. During these times, what Mary Ellen and I say is, use what you have in the refrigerator, okay? So, it's nice and thick and chunky. And what I like about, okay, Instant Pot, you gotta get out of my way again. All right. What I like about this dish, let's see if I can show it to you. Oh, it gets a little slippery, but it's nice. It has a nice consistency to it. The lentils don't fall apart, but you can see we have some carrots in here, but not very much of the sweet potato. So if you like the sweet potato, add the sweet potato in later. But I'm going to just take a little taste, see how it held up in the refrigerator overnight. It's really hot. What I really like about this is that the sweet potato, when it breaks down, gives a nice sweet flavor as well as a richness to the broth. I might add a little bit more salt and a little bit more pepper just to zing it up. If you add the curry to it, it adds another depth of flavor as well. But really good. I mean, I'm just going to have this just like this right now. I wish I could share it with you, but no, I'm not. No. I'm so glad you guys could share this time with me today. Hope to see you tonight for our Take 20. I appreciate everybody joining. I see Rita is there. Thanks for joining us. Debbie and Karen and Peggy, thank you so much for joining us. And we will see you, and Kathy too. Can't forget Kathy. Thank you so much. And we will see you next Tuesday for our next cooking class. Take care and be well.